We are ready.
Very much.
We are on. So back to Pesach, also known as Passover. Why the difference between Pesach and Passover?
Yeah, that's what I always
They
thought.
don't mean the exact same thing.
Okay.
Pesach is the Passover offering. It's the name given to the sacrifice. Yeah, Paschal lamb is where it comes from Pesach. Paschal. You like that whole...
Hi.
Excellent. That Passover is because the
Did you like that one? We got more.
Oh yeah, yeah.
passed over us for that final plague. The death of the first.
Well, it means to do a lot of work.
It means a lot of work. Okay, so we're going through different themes of Pesach. I need to cross my legs. So Pesach for Carol Sue is work. We're probably going to hire somebody to clean the house.
With a few other things in here.
With a few other things, like what?
Like, you know,
Did you read another name?
the story.
Yeah.
So why work?
Because you have two big Seder. Well, I have two big Seders.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, people come over, we eat special food. I have to get rid of all my other food that I eat year long.
So you have to get rid of the food, you have to switch over, you have to make a Seder. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into the Spring Festival of Passover. What else? What else do we know about Pesach? Passover.
We eat
Many
matzah.
things that come at once.
We eat matzah.
For me,
Oh,
my
right.
family's in Massachusetts, and we have a Seder. My sisters have Seder here. And I'm jumping through hoops so that I can at least make it this year, even though Melanie can't make it. And my sisters and brother-in-law are very creative with their Seder.
I'll go back there and
It's
look,
something
but
we all
I'll
look
check the
forward to.
system as well.
Yeah.
Just,
But I think that's something that was
So we have
stood
the
out.
Seder, which is really the centerpiece for a lot of us as a holiday. We'll get there. Yes, the Seder.
That's
Yeah.
nice. You don't want to be
No, we're
here.
going to get there. The Seder is the major meal at the beginning of it where we tell the story. So we'll get there. Any other things, though, that we can think of that you're supposed to do on Pesach or that, or at Passover that you're familiar with?
You don't eat bread.
You don't eat bread.
It's actually foods made with wheat, barley, rye, and sprouts.
And oats. Of the main
Oats,
grain.
peas, beans, and barley.
Yeah. Not beans. Beans is a different category. So, let's get to the nitty-gritty then.
But you could you define again which
I will
foods
get
are really
there. I
not
will get
okay.
there. We have to go into a systematic. We have to
Alright.
hit this in a systematic way. Passover
Never that often.
is a festival of spring. It is a festival of freedom because it remembers it is the story of Jews being in slavery for 400 years under Pharaoh, being in the darkest time. And it's funny singing Anima Amin. I believe, for writing that down, I believe that God is there even when God's silent. There's a question of why did God leave us in Egypt for 400 years? But we're redeemed. We're redeemed. We have Moses. We have, all the plagues, like blood and frogs, and you know what I'm talking about? And fiery hail from the sky, all this stuff. And we're saved
You've written a lot of books.
by God's hand to be
Our distributor.
free, not
Is it
free
pronounced
to do
Pharaoh,
anything that we
Cairo,
please,
or-
but free from being subject to human royalty, from being subject to human slave masters, to being owned by human beings, free to go and serve
When
God.
I-
He's the only one that we
when I
should be
looked
fully
even
serving,
more
fully
detailed for
obligated.
numerology, the only thing that came
Which
up
is
was
something to
when
think
we
about
were-
when we do all this work to prepare for it. It's a
Endeavor
festival,
to show
being free to
an
serve God, free to serve that which is holy.
It's a-
But it's a
voice
festival of
cover,
freedom,
just as
of
when
not
God
being
gives a
limited
reaper.
to the yoke of another person. And the story goes that we didn't have
This is
time
something that he would have had numerology
to,
in the
we
title.
didn't have time to
Yep.
let
It
our
says,
bread rise when we
when
had
had
to leave
seven
Egypt.
products,
And so the Midrash tells us that the
numerology.
bread had, the Israelites put it on their back and they baked in the sun, and so we got the really thin cracker like stuff known as matzah. And so we are commanded, ultimately the commandments that are in the Torah. Now we are supposed to eat unleavened bread, nothing that rises. We're supposed to eat for 7 days in the Torah. And we're supposed to tell this story.
But just specifically
Tell the story of
numerology,
freedom in every generation.
The only thing that came up once I typed in numerology
Again, because as we
as a
know,
sub-search was
freedom
that
and lack of freedom is something that is always relevant. We have slavery today. We have this nation has an unfortunate history of a lot of slavery, which Quentin Tarantino told us about very recently, in what I thought was an interesting movie. And it still happens today where we have, maybe not to the same degree, but where we have workers who are not paid fair wages. In Florida, when people aren't paid fair wages, they may not be slaves in the sense of the word, but they certainly aren't treated well, and they're in conditions where they can't really improve for themselves. So, and then we see this kind of thing happening all over the world. We see the sex trade, where women are essentially slaves. It's something that we constantly need to overcome. We constantly need to fight for freedom of all, which makes this holiday always a relevant holiday and always important. I mean, one of the most famous songs of Passover, when Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go, or from Ferris Bueller, let my Cameron go. That's a black spiritual in the South.
One of the books that came
because
up
African Americans fighting for their freedom. It was the same story.
Called The Romance of
The Jewish population and the African American population got along so well in the 60s and 70s, as we all know. And so it's a very important holiday. So of those two commandments,
now this just means this is what the distributor has.
Famous ones we
Ingram
have
is
food.
the largest distributor in the country, but
And the other side of it is we have the
it
store.
might be available.
So we have 7 days of celebration, and it's expanded to 8 days for a lot of Judaism because we have, as we've talked about before, because we weren't sure about the clocks, we have every day where you're not supposed to do any work of any sort, you expand it to 2 days just to make sure we got it right. So you have the 8 days.
Because he has unique books.
8 days of no leavened product being in your home.
You're welcome to take that if you want.
So leavened product referring to bread. The way matzah works, matzah is that cracker-like substance that we eat as bread.
Well, thank you for introducing me to that author. I've never heard of it.
Maximum 18 minutes to make sure, because while there's no yeast that goes into it, flour rises and when wet, and so you have to make sure that it's on a very high heat, and that you put lots of holes in it so it doesn't, so the air bubbles don't cause it to grow, and that from the time the water, so it's your most basic matzah, which some denominations is the only true matzah, is a mix of flour, water, and salt. And you make the dough, and from the time the water hits the flour, you bake it, and it still has to be under the oven for it to be kosher. There are a lot of variations, you put in the egg matzah, you put in onions, you put wheat. And there's some groups of Jews, I can't find to it, who don't think you should put anything wet on the matzah, because the wet almost causes it to change, to move, and that there's a mitzvah in really just eating the matzah the way it is. Chabad will do that, and it's only on the last day of Pesach that they can really celebrate it and put like tuna salad on their matzah or something like that. They see it as an extra level of commitment. But anyways, you don't eat anything leavened. And so leavened includes anything from the 5 grains that is not made into matzah. So you don't eat wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. And in addition to that, Ashkenazi Jews have Ashkenazi, those from more Central Europe, Eastern Europe, have eliminated from their diet things that appear to rise, that are kind of like it. And some might say it's because it appeared to rise. Some say it's because it was carried in the same baskets, and so they didn't want contamination of crumbs. So legumes, beans, rice. Well, legumes include beans and rice, so there'd be no contamination. The Sephardim don't have that same tradition. I think they're very smart. You have other things like mustard seed is considered a legume, so that's why it's very hard to find kosher for Pesach mustard. Sergio, would I be able,
the latte.
Thank you. Sorry, I just have a pounding headache. Thank you. It's that's it. But sorry, I lost my train. Yes. So if you're Sephardi, you can eat. Those are called kidneyot, and in Israel, kidneyot, that is the basic standard for Pesach. So they will eat those things as well. Then you have a whole line of kosher for Pesach ingredients because you can't have any contamination. So part of the preparation for Pesach is cleaning out your home thoroughly. The original spring cleaning, where ultimately you're supposed to save a tiny bit for the night before Pesach, and you burn what is left, biur hametz, or biur hametz, and where people would bring it into the street and burn it, and it's a sense of you're really getting rid of any leavened product.
We used to go around, hide pieces in our home, when I lived with my parents, and we'd go around with a feather.
Yes.
And the whole night.
Oh, the feather in the candle?
Yep, and that feather in a candle, and we burn it.
And so it's all in the name of doing something holy, of having your home spotless, ready for the holidays. So you go through everything. Different people do it in different degrees.
Some people put this stuff in their garage.
Well, that's one
I
option.
sold it to my neighbors.
That's what I was going to
That's
bring
good.
up. I thought in Hebrew school we learned you're supposed to sell it to your non-Jewish
So one of the ways to get around it, and really how it happened is because you can't. So another example of things you can't have, or you can't have alcohols that are made of these fermented products. So you can't have beer. You can't have scotch, which makes me sad. You can't have vodka unless it's potato vodka. Rum is okay, and tequila. So because these things are all made from ferments, ferments refers to all that stuff you can't eat. But you would have shopkeepers who have a lot of wares, and they can't really get rid of it. Like if you have somebody who owns a liquor store, you can't get rid of it. So what they did is they made a legal fiction where they set up some laws that would make it that another person who's not Jewish owns the chametz during the period of Pesach, and you lock it in a place where it'll be out of the way. So like, let's say I want to put all my chametz in my closet. I sell it to somebody, or I have an agent who sells it to somebody. Often a rabbi in the community will do that. I don't know if I see it as full integrity. If you're just going to close it off, close it off. We'll see. I don't offer that service, but Chabad offers that service of finding a non-Jew to buy the chametz. If there's protest in the temple, of Emmanuel community, then we can talk about it. But the idea is that it doesn't belong to you. That space doesn't belong to you. So technically, the chametz isn't in your property. So a lot of people will seal off their cabinets. But in addition to that, you also change up your dishes. And today, different products will be labeled kosher for Passover. So that way you know that in the facility where it was produced, there was no contamination. Because it's very important for us to go to everybody's detail. So there's
some products that you can
yes, however, to make sure there's no contamination, you can't, at the strictest level of it, you can't use that product if it was opened before the holiday.
Oh, wow.
Fair enough, it's open, but you can.
Exactly.
Do you know that Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola is one of the biggest things? They run kosher for
If you ever
Passover.
see Coca-Cola products with a yellow cap, it's because they can't use the regular recipe because the regular recipe is made with corn syrup.
Wow.
Corn being a legume, which means that it makes it non-kosher for Passover. So a lot of people who know, oh wow, thank you so much. I didn't realize, I thought you had the machine for it.
Oh, it's from Great Awakening?
Thank you so much. How much do I owe you? Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it would be. Thank you.
Line on it, but
Do you need sugar or
line
anything?
I didn't like.
Thank you so much.
You're so
Thank you. These guys are wonderful. Buy books here. Come buy books and to be continued.
Yes, they will.
What's this?
We're just kidding. We say we'll order Chinese and they'll bring it to us on
Thank
the
you,
tray.
Sandra. You're welcome.
That's a great restaurant over there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So lattes can be kosher. Coffee can be kosher, and that was actually a brilliant marketing technique. Maxwell House, and I brought a Maxwell House Haggadah, started publishing Haggadot, which we'll get to what that is, to show that Maxwell House instant coffee can be kosher for Passover. You just have to make sure there's no contamination. But it means that different people will have different standards. Let's say you're going to somebody's home for Passover, you should check to see who has what standards. For some people, it's enough just to have the food out. Some people, my family would just not open up the cabinets at home and use all the same dishes. Some people, Miriam and I, will switch over all our dishes and we cover our counters, we cover the surfaces, so it's kosher. So they're different degrees.
I have a really funny story to tell you. But okay, when I first first married, I wanted to make sure everything was kosher, everything was terrific. So came Pesach, and I wanted to kosher all my, make all my knives and forks kosher for Passover.
And by the way, ask questions at any point if you don't know what's going on.
So I asked him. So, so I took all my knives and forks, I put them in a big pot, right? And then you're supposed to put a stone in the boiling water.
Well, do you know why? It's because you're supposed to hit every surface. And so if the water is filled to the brim with boiling water, then it will kosher the inside, but it won't kosher the outside. So the idea of putting in a hot stone to the boiling water is it causes all the water to overflow over the side of the pot and get the outside.
Fast forward, or go back. And I go outside, it was raining. I go outside to get a stone. I bring it back. I put it in there. I walk out in the kitchen and it exploded. The stone exploded. Evidently the water inside the stone boiled or whatever it was. And it exploded. And I said, God doesn't want me to do this.
This is what you're supposed to heat up.
I'm not doing that anymore.
For.
Plastic or nothing.
Yeah. But there are different ways to kosher, and I think that's for a different class. If you have questions about koshering for Pesach, I'm happy to answer them at another time. But so that's the first mitzvah of getting rid of the levit. The second mitzvah, which is the big mitzvah, is that of telling the story. And for telling the story, what's better for telling the story than over food? So we set up the Seder, which is Seder literally stands for order, and it's actually modeled after a Roman symposium. Because the Romans were the wealthy ones, and so Pesach is a festival of freedom, where we are in charge. We are free to do what we will do, and so so telling the story means having a conversation, means asking questions, and so typically at the Seder, one of the things that will happen is a child, the youngest person there, will ask 4 questions. And really, a Seder is kosher as long as one person asks one good question. It doesn't even need to be those 4 questions. One good question that leads to the telling of the story and leads to adapting the story to the modern life. So we have these 4 questions. One of them is, why do we sit reclined? Some Seders, one person will have a cushion. I never did it reclining, so I always didn't understand the reclining, how it worked. But some people will have a pillow under their backs. But in Roman days, they would sit, and they would actually be like lying back on a couch. Oh, yeah, thank you. They would be lying back on a sofa. And so that way, you would really be living in the lap of luxury. So at these symposia, they would just have copious amounts of food. And they would sit around, and they would eat, and they would talk about conversations. If you ever read a symposium, that's an example of a symposium. So that's what the Seder is modeled after, and there are 15 steps for it. And so as we go through, Seder literally means order. So what I did is a Haggadah. Lehagid means to tell the story. So we have the mitzvah of telling the story. So why don't everybody grab a Haggadah, and I'll take us through. This is the Haggadah that we use at Temple Emanu. If you need a place to go at Temple Emanu, call the office. We have tickets being sold for the second night Seder. And if finances are a problem, let us know, and then we take care of it. But it's a wonderful night for all. Some Seders don't last very long, and some go into the wee hours of the morning, depending on the conversation. Seder is not meant to simply be read. So you see that you have the search for chametz on the beginning, and of course it's a blessing, because we have a blessing for everything. So if you go, let's go.
It opens this way.
Oh yes, sorry. Jewish books tend to open from right to left, as in the Hebrew language. So you got it. Harris, you got it. Okay. So we also divide the meal into 4 sections. Why? And so we mark these sections with 4 cups of wine, or grape product. We use wine, as we've talked about, or grape products to sanctify occasions. And the 4 cups here come from the 4 verses that talk about God redeeming us from Egypt, that are in the Torah. However, the rabbis debate that there might be a 5th verse that does that. So what do? They add a 5th cup of wine at the end that they call Elijah's cup. So nobody actually drinks that cup, but we have a token 5th cup to show that there's a disagreement among the rabbis. So you'll see if we go through the table of contents, that you always mark a festival. We're starting on page 2, top left column. You always mark a festival with the lighting of candles, so we do so. And you bless the children, because it's always good to bless our future. You always want that. And then we go through, essentially, it's a table of contents. It's a song, let me look at the words to see it. Kadesh ochatz, kabas yachatz, magid ratza, motzi matzah. It's a mnemonic device to help remind us of what the order of the events will be. So, actually that might be better. So let's go to page 6. These are the different things that you'll have. And among these, part of the setup before you get to... I'm sorry, let's go back to the table of contents because it has a little bit more. But page 6, that is a description of what will come. What you'll see on the Seder table, you'll see a plate with a bunch of matzah on it. Usually there's one that has 3. There's the top, middle, and bottom. And you'll have a Seder plate that has different ingredients on it that are symbolic of the different of the different Passover rituals. There's a lot of symbolism in this holiday. And so what we'll have, first we do Kaddish, which is the, you have Kiddush, which is the first cup of wine, where you sanctify it. And then you wash your hands, because you want to wash away the ritual cooties. You want to make yourself pure for this very important thing. And then you take karpas. And let's see, what page is the, does anybody see the Seder plate? Because I'd rather show you all. This is a new Haggadah to me, so let's find the Seder plate. Oh, I'll have one in here. Okay. So you'll have a plate with all, did you find it? Okay, you'll have a plate. If you can see in this picture right here, it's nice and little. And so you have on it, you'll typically find an egg, which is known as a beitzah. And what would an egg be representative of?
Spring.
New life, offspring, spring, the circle of life, absolutely. You'll have zarua, a shank bone, which, what would the shank bone symbolize? The Paschal Lamb, our sacrifice, the one that we used when the angel of death, we used the Paschal Lamb as a sacrifice to God, and then we marked our doorposts with its blood to keep the angel of death at bay. We have maror, which are bitter herbs. Bitter herbs, bitter for the tears. Exactly, bitter for the Israelite experience. We've got charoset, which is this delicious... So, by the way, maror is usually interpreted as horseradish. Charoset, which is this delicious paste that in Ashkenazi circles is made. I make the best. Which is usually a blend of like apples, nuts, and wine. It's almost like mortar, but delicious. But Sephardim will often put dates in there, oranges, apricots. You have all kinds. It's basically designed to be a fruity, nutty paste. Yeah. And you have karpas. You have karpas, which is a green vegetable that also symbolizes spring. And so we often use parsley for karpas, and then we dip that in salt water, which you'll see. In salt water, which symbolizes the tears of the Israelites in Egypt. However, a lot of people use parsley. If you go into Ashkenazi households, a lot of people will use boiled potatoes. Why? Because when you're in northern Eastern Europe, you may not have fresh green vegetables yet at this point in time, so they say, well, we don't have green vegetables, but we do have potatoes. So we'll use some potatoes. Exactly. So...
And although they don't say it in there,
yeah.
there is the orange.
So the orange is something that some people do. Orange is part of the feminist revolution, where somebody said a woman has as much right to be on the bima, which is essentially the stage in the synagogue, as an orange has on the Seder plate. So some people said, F you, guy who said that, I'm putting an orange on my Seder plate. So that is where the orange on the Seder plate comes from.
Did somebody ask for it?
My funny story, the first year we did that with the egg, they tell you to use a roasted egg, so my mother was like,
Pretty representative.
so you boil the egg and put it in with the brisket, that egg was completely fossilized by the time it was. If I had thrown it at you, because there was nothing similar.
What I do, I cheat a little, and I boil the egg in tea.
Ooh.
It browns it at the same time.
It makes it look like it was
And
perfect.
then to make it crackly and look like it's really roasted, I take it with a thing and I put it on the fire.
So,
it looks all roasted.
so let's keep on going because I want to show you some stuff. So first you have all the symbols of the holiday, and we go through different steps of recognizing what's happening. So we have the symbols that remind us of the story, and we really partake in them. So first we have the hand washing, and then you have the time where you get to serve celery and dip, because you start off dipping the parsley in salt water. So you do it. So it's very important when you go to a Seder not to eat everything that's on the table, but to wait until the person who's leading the Seder tells you what to do. And again, if you're going to bring anything, because often we want to bring things when we go places, my mother told me never to show up anywhere empty-handed.
Okay.
Make sure you understand the level of kashrut and what is permitted in that home and what is not permitted in that home before you do it. Growing up, it was everybody brought a dish. If Miriam and I were to host a Seder, we would say just bring yourselves, because not everybody has the same understanding, and you don't want to embarrass anyone by saying, oh wait, you brought bacon. Sorry, I can't eat it.
I would bring like
I would bring
Pardon me?
like a carrot cake or something?
No, because that would be leavened product. You'd be making that with flour. So you could make one out of matzah meal, which is like matzah meal is like it's floured matzah, but even then it's
Bring one.
They have cake meal.
it's cake meal. But the other issue with that would be that if you baked it at home, I don't know if your kitchen is at the same level of Pesach friendly as mine is. Right, it probably isn't, but I'm not going to make judgments, but it puts me in an uncomfortable position because I don't want to embarrass you. But I also need to make sure that my kitchen stays at the level of kosher that
Best
I
thing
want it
to
to
do
be.
is you buy a thing of candy that's all wrapped in everything, that's sealed, and it says kosher for Pesach.
Yeah, you go to a Jewish
For
stall.
wine, that's
A little wine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sealed
You can't go
products
wrong.
tend to be better to bring.
No,
Fresh
not
fruit could be safe. You can also bring a little piece of art or a tablecloth or a nice little gift of that. Host gifts, because if there's no food on it, then there really isn't an issue there.
But fresh food, you don't know where it was.
It's true. It's true. It's less sketchy, but still. Okay, so then you break. So you have that, and then you break the middle matzah because it's a fun little treat. Don't worry, we've got 15 minutes left. I'm keeping an eye.
We're going to do this in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I've got an eye on the clock because I have a meeting at the temple at 8:30. So you break the middle matzah, and then usually the person leading the Seder, who's often a patriarch or matriarch in the family, a very older person, sometimes it's me because I have more experience in my family, they'll take half of that matzah and they'll wrap it and they'll hide it. And that's called the afikomen, which is the kids' it's supposed to be your dessert. I don't know who thought matzah would be a good dessert. But they hide it somewhere in the house, and then the kids go and search for it after the dinner, and then whoever finds it, the master of the Seder has to buy it back from them. So it's a nice little game that you get to
It's
play.
not just a game. If you don't find the matzah and eat that,
Your Seder isn't over.
You can't continue with
Okay,
the
can we
Seder.
get a note that says in the house? My father-in-law hides the afikomen
I-
for the kids, and he goes, it's somewhere in Middlesex County. So then I have kids outside the backyard with flash.
I usually dictate the rules of where it can go, where it can't.
Yeah.
I know somebody who hid it in the VCR.
My sister hid it in the dryer
Oh,
once, and she didn't
goodness.
find it till she did laundry.
Till she had toasted matzah.
Oh, gee.
Okay. By the way, there are lots of fun things you can do with matzah. Matzah pizza is a personal favorite.
Matzah lasagna.
So, anyways, you have this first level. That's the first section of the service where you really, that's introducing the symbolism. Then you get to the second cup, which you mark. And by the way, in a lot of the old Haggadot, it'll usually say raise your glass. If you've said the blessing, because you say the blessing over wine every time, that means you get to drink it. It means you get to drink it. Not everybody fills it up, or not everybody drinks the whole thing, but you might drink the whole thing, who knows. So then you move into Magid, which is a section of the story. This is all before the main meal, and you go through the story. First you connect it. It always starts, my father was a wandering Aramean. Basically meaning that we were nomads. We didn't have a home. We know what it is to be homeless. Yes.
You do all 7 days or just one?
You do this. You're required to do this at least once.
Oh.
So everybody does it the first night, or some
do
people
it-
have traditions
do
where
it
they
twice?
move it a little bit.
No, we do it Saturday because they're all accountants, and that's the only night.
Oh.
So whether Saturday is first night, sixth night,
You
we
do what you
Saturday.
can do,
And when
exactly.
you do the
The
rest,
more important thing
Well,
is that you do
you
it
just
and you tell
eat.
the story.
Oh,
You
that's all?
you
Okay.
celebrate for the rest of the nights. You celebrate because it's a holiday. You go to synagogue, and some people, or traditionally, will do it for 2 nights because since you have 2 days of very special Chag, which was the same thing with Sukkot when we talked about it, and 2 days at the end rather than 1 day because of us not knowing when it begins and ends. We do 2 seders. We do a seder on the first night and we do a seder on the second night. So we'll tell the story by first identifying all of us with this, and then you have the 4 children. You have the 4 questions. 4 questions, which if we look on page 18. Sorry. No, I'm sorry. That's not page 18. It is page 14. These are the questions that get the conversation started. These are suggested questions, which the youngest kids eat.
These are the questions that the story answers.
Exactly. So on all other nights we eat either leavened bread or matzah. We can eat both, but this night we only eat matzah. Why? And then on all other nights we can eat all vegetables, but on this night we specifically eat bitter herbs. Why? So we talk about the bitterness of slavery. This night we don't. All other nights we don't have to dip. You might have ranch dressing, but we don't dip everything. This night we dip. Why? And this night we eat reclining. Why? Because that's strange. Doing what the Romans did to celebrate. But these are all things that appear that the youngest child will usually ask why to get the conversation started. Then you give the short answer, which was, we were slaves, now we're free. But then you bring up the 4 children. You have 4 children, and I'm not going to take you through it in great detail, but there are 4 children. You have the why. What does the wise child ask? What does the simple child ask? What does the wicked child ask? Because, and then there's one. Then the one who's unable to ask. So you account for all kinds of learning styles. You have different people who ask different kinds of questions, who have different needs, and so the idea of the Seder is that there are different stories built in that address that question, all to teach about freedom and the importance of not taking it for granted. So then you get into a long story about our history and the promise, and you work your way through this longer story, and then you talk about the 10 plagues because that's the big miracle that happened. And the funny thing is, guess who's missing from this story? This version of it. No, Moses. They don't talk about Moses because we want to make sure that we understand that the divine redemption does not fall on one person alone. We believe it was God, that we were blessed, that we were redeemed, but that we also can't attribute freedom to only one person who was in the past. So, and then we get to Dayenu, which is this great song in 48 that goes, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Oh, but before that, quickly. When we go through the 10 plagues, you'll see this is it looks strange, that people will take their pinky or another finger and put a drop of wine on the plate for every plague. And you go through it, and that's the idea of saying that while we're pleased that we got out, we understand that other people did not do so well in the process. And so we put out a drop of wine to show that we're not taking complete joy in this. It's symbolic. And we sing Dayenu to show that we're quite thankful, and that had God just redeemed us from Egypt and done nothing more, that would be enough. And we go through a big litany, a giant list of what we're thankful for, basically. And had God not given us the next thing, that would have been enough, but God did. And so we give a lot of thanks. And then we go back and we hit another dimension, which are the special foods. What is the Paschal offering? What is the bitterness? What are these symbols? So we go through symbols again, and we make sandwiches of different foods and matzah, and you eat those. Some of them are tasty. Some of them, that's where all the kids are like, I have to eat horseradish now. And then you get...
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Cirrhosis is very
Oh, it's totally good. Absolutely. Then, oh, by the way, but before that you have a little bit of Hallel, a little bit of praising, because you can never go without praising God, you read some psalms and you sing. And then you have third cup of wine. You do some hand washing, you say motzi, that's where you have the sandwiches, and then you have shulchan aruch, the set table, which is basically you have dinner. And a lot of places stop their Seder there because they eat and then the kids go off. But technically speaking, you're not supposed to stop the Seder there. You eat till you're stuffed. Sometimes, depending on the Seder you go to, you don't end up eating until 11:30 at night because the conversation goes for a very long time. That will not be the Temple Emmanuel Seder, but that'll be some Seders. Then, of course, after that, you eat dessert. The Afikomen has to be the last thing you eat. And then you bench, you say Birkat Hamazon, the blessing after meals, and then you drink that third cup of wine. Then you give Elijah's cup and you say something that basically asks Elijah to make everything good in this world, to bring redemption. And then you have your fourth cup, because you haven't had enough wine yet, clearly. Then you do a lot more praise, and then you sing some songs. You sing a lot of fun songs, and the last line that's usually said is Lashana Haba Yerushalayim, may next year be in Israel, because Israel is our ultimate goal for redemption, to get there. And that is the Seder. Then you go 7 days of celebration, you go to synagogue. Sometimes actually the day leading up to Passover, you'll have any firstborn sons will fast because they're thankful they weren't killed along with the Egyptian sons.
Is it only the firstborn son, or only the firstborn child?
It's only the firstborn son because it's only the firstborn sons who were nearly killed. Because it's not about egalitarianism, because nobody, I don't know, I mean, you could fast. You could be thankful that you weren't killed as a firstborn daughter, but you wouldn't have been killed as a firstborn daughter. It's really giving thanks for something that didn't happen to you. So I'm not telling anybody not to fast. In some synagogues, like where I grew up, they said you don't need to fast if you come and you learn that morning. So they would have morning service before, and you could come and study instead of fasting the whole day, which I thought was a really neat way to get people in to learn. So you have 7 days. You can go to work in the middle days. That's where you bring your matzah and brisket and pickle sandwich. And sometimes there'll be appetizers served out, by the way, throughout at the different stages. Like after you do the dipping of the vegetables, and you get your potatoes, and you get your eggs, and you get your gefilte fish, or if you're Moroccan, you have your Moroccan fish. It's much better than gefilte fish. And lastly, at the end of Passover, often the Moroccans have a beautiful tradition. It's called an Emanu, which is a celebration where they bring all sorts of bread products, and this is actually a way that they had a wonderful relationship with their Muslim neighbors and Christian neighbors, where they would invite them over and they would bring pasta and bread, and so they get to have a super carb load afterwards to really welcome themselves back into this kind of society, because they couldn't have it in their own homes.
Do you ever participate in that?
We used to have one in my home synagogue because there were a lot of Moroccans in the community. And then the last thing to note is that you'll find lots of different Haggadah. A Haggadah is a work of beauty. It's a fascinating work of literature. It's just a little bit of show and tell. This is the one that has a lot of great stuff in it that I haven't actually looked through yet.
Great artwork.
Yeah, that we use in Temple Emmanuel. This is the standard Canadian Orthodox Jewish Haggadah. That's kind of boring, but it's what I grew up with and has a special place in my heart. Have you ever seen this in the States?
Yeah.
Oh, because I don't know anyone in the States that ever used it, or I hadn't met anyone that ever used it. So this is what I grew up with. This is the very famous Maxwell House Haggadah. That was a brilliant piece of publishing from the Maxwell House Coffee Company to tell people that their coffee does not count as kidneyot, but that their coffee is kosher for Passover. If anyone has read either Everything's Illuminated, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which was made into a movie with Tom Hanks, or Eating Animals, Jonathan Safran Foer decided to make a new American Haggadah, which is fascinating. I don't know if it's the best Haggadah. It's beautiful, actually. It's not the best Haggadah for actually working through for the Seder for everybody, but it has some really nice material in it and some really nice commentary. And then the last one that I have, and you're welcome to look through this, the last piece that I have is, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but the Szyk Haggadah. He's a Polish, come America artist who died in 1957, who did some beautiful work in illustrating the Haggadah. Yeah. So Haggadot and a lot of Jewish texts can be illuminated as works of art, and that's exactly what we have with the Shik Haggadah, which you can order online. SZYK. You can order any of these. And so that's Pesach in a nutshell.
Could you please translate? I know it says door by door.
So this is what we are required to do. Bechol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. So in every generation and generation, a person, not a man, a person is obligated to see his or herself as if he left Egypt. So it's not just that we need to tell the story, it's that we always need to put ourselves in that mindset. Because we always need to know what it is not to be free and to become free. It's a very important lesson. I just threw a lot at you. But, are there any questions? You thought I couldn't get through it in 15 minutes.
What?
I'm
really impressed.
Thank you.
That you did
2,000
that.
years of
I am like
history.
shocked. You must have a really fast Seder too. Wow.
No. And there are lots of fun songs to
I
sing
like
at the end.
that.
One little kid.
There's a lot.
Actually, I'll do a quick version of that. So there's a song about that's basically about the cycle of justice, of divine justice, and it's about a little goat. It starts off. So everybody say Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. No, sing it. Chad. So Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. And there are lots of actions. So we say, so Abba's father, and Zuz was an Aramaic coin in that. So I'll say that my Abba bought, and everybody go, thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
With actions, thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuz, even then we sing it, Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. So then came the cat. Who wants to be the cat?
Oh, go ahead.
Cat.
Yeah.
That bit the goat. No, somebody did. That my Abba bought. Thanks, Dad. Everybody. No, you gotta. Everybody has to do thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the dog. That bit the cat. That ate the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the stick. Whack! That beat the dog. That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the fire. That burnt the stick. That beat the dog. That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the water. That quenched the fire. That burnt the stick. That beat the dog. That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the cow. Good. That drank the water. That burnt the fire. Quenched the fire. That burnt the stick. That beat the dog. That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the kosher slaughterer. The shochet. Chop. Then came the shochet. That slew the cow.
Moo.
That drank the water. That quenched the fire. That burnt the stick. That beat the dog.
Woof.
That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya. Then came the angel of death. Boo. Who slew the shochet.
Chop.
Who slew the cow.
Moo.
Who drank the water. That quenched the fire. That burnt the stick. That beat the dog.
Woof.
That ate the cat. That bit the goat. That my Abba bought.
Thanks, Dad.
For two Zuzim. Chad Gad Ya, Chad Gad Ya.
Ya.
Then came God.
Yay.
Who punished the angel of death? Who slew the slaughterer? Who slew the cow? That drank the water? That bit the that quenched the fire? That burnt the stick? That beat the dog? That ate the cat? That bit the goat? That might have a butt?
Thanks, Dad.
For two zoos. Hot God, yeah, hot God, yeah. So that is the song.
That's nice,
That is-
except God said the
12
angel of
days
death
of
would give
Christmas, you
itself
know?
Oh,
alone.
yes. Yes. Pardon me?
It's almost like the 12 days of Christmas, you know, that kind of format.
Yes.
Exactly, but better.
Better.
Because it's entered. No, 12 days. Well, you've got the 12 Canadian days of Christmas. 5 golden toques. Yeah, toque is a winter hat. It's Rick Moranis thing. And a beer in a tree. That's yeah, Rick Moranis, everybody. So thank you, everyone.
No, it is one of your books.
Oh, thank you.
That's a good one.
Oh yeah. There's a Lemony. The guy who wrote Lemony Snicket actually put some of the commentary in there. Yeah. Sergio,
Yes, sir.
where should I leave the mug?
Leave it there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I can bring it back if you want. It's just across the street, right?
Well, Mr. Joe supposed to leave, so. Thank you.
But thank you.
Yes. I must run out. Harris, good to
I'm
see you.
running too.
Jenny, good to see you.
You fly every day?
Kelsey, good to see you.
No, I have a conference
Running.
call at 8 o'clock from
Pardon me?
Israel.
I don't recall.